The envelope arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, carrying a name that had been dead for 11 months. Jonah Mercer stood in his tiny kitchen, one hand holding a mug of cold coffee and the other gripping the letters so tightly that his fingers trembled. His daughter's name was printed across the front in black ink. Amelia Mercer, his little girl, the child who used to run through that same kitchen wearing mismatched. Before we continue, if stories about second chances, kindness, and unexpected hope touch your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Your support helps us bring more stories of second chances to people who need them. Jonah spent that entire night going through Amelia's old belongings. He opened boxes he had been too afraid to touch since the funeral. There were photographs, school certificates, childhood drawings, and a faded blue sweater Amelia had worn during her final winter. He found nothing that explained the debt. Amelia had worked as an assistant for a private investment company in the city, but she had never lived extravagantly. She had always been the kind of person who noticed other people's pain before her own. Jonah remembered how she would secretly buy groceries for an elderly neighbor, how she once gave her last $20 to a homeless mother, and how she always told Noah that money was useful, but kindness was priceless. The following morning, Jonah called the number on the notice. The person on the other end told him there would be no extension. The debt was legitimate, they said, and Amelia had personally signed several documents connected to a private financial arrangement. Jonah felt something inside him break. He had lost his daughter once. Now it felt as though someone was taking her away from him a second time by turning her memory into a financial burden. 3 days later, while Jonah was repairing an old delivery van at the mechanic shop, a long black car stopped outside. An elderly man stepped out slowly. He was tall despite his age, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal coat, with silver hair and a face marked by years of power, grief, and loneliness. 2 men followed him, but the old man raised a hand and told them to stay outside. He walked directly toward Jonah and asked whether he was Amelia Mercer's father. Jonah wiped his greasy hands on a rag and immediately became defensive. He expected another collector, another lawyer, another person demanding money. Instead, the old man looked at him with tears gathering in his eyes and quietly said that his name was Victor Hale. He was 81 years old, founder of Hale International, and one of the wealthiest men in the country. Jonah recognized the name instantly. Victor Hale was worth billions. Men like him lived in another universe. Yet he stood in a dirty mechanic shop with trembling hands, looking like a father who had just lost his whole world. Victor told Jonah that Amelia had worked for him personally during the final year of her life. She had discovered that someone inside his company had been secretly transferring money from a charitable foundation into private accounts. Amelia had investigated the transactions and uncovered evidence that could have destroyed several powerful people. Before she could finish her investigation, she was killed in a highway accident. The official report called it a tragic accident, but Victor had never believed the story completely. Amelia had left behind a sealed package for him, but Victor had only received it months later because it had been hidden with a trusted attorney. Inside was a list of fraudulent transactions, several copies of financial documents, and one handwritten note. Amelia had written that if anything happened to her, Victor should make sure her father and younger brother were protected. She had also admitted that she had temporarily used her own name to secure funds for an emergency investigation, which was how the $87,000 debt had been created. Victor looked at Jonah and told him he had not come to collect the money. He had come to pay it. Jonah could barely breathe. He asked why a billionaire would care about a mechanic and his children. Victor's expression changed. He explained that Amelia had saved his life without ever telling him. Months before her death, Victor had been preparing to end his own life after losing his wife and becoming completely isolated from everyone around him. Amelia had noticed the change in him. She had started bringing him coffee, talking about ordinary things, showing him photographs of Noah, and reminding him that grief did not mean a person had stopped being needed. She had treated him like a human being instead of a billionaire. According to Victor, she had given him a reason to keep waking up. And now, after her death, he had realized something that haunted him every night. He had received a second chance because of Amelia, while her family was struggling to survive without her. Victor handed Jonah a folder. Inside were documents proving that the debt would be completely paid, the house would remain his, and a trust had been established for Noah's education. Jonah refused at first. Pride, grief, and fear battled inside him. He did not want charity. He wanted his daughter back. Victor understood. He told Jonah that this was not charity. It was a debt of love, and some debts could never be measured in dollars. Jonah finally broke down. Months of exhaustion poured out of him as he cried in the middle of the mechanic's shop. Victor stood beside him and did not try to stop the tears. For the first time since Amelia's funeral, Jonah felt that someone understood the unbearable weight he had been carrying. But Victor had one more surprise. The investigation Amelia had started had not ended with her death. Victor had quietly continued it, and the evidence eventually exposed the people responsible for stealing from his foundation. The case became national news, and Amelia's name was cleared completely. The fraudulent debt attached to her name was officially removed. More importantly, Victor established a new charitable program in Amelia's memory to help struggling single parents with housing, education, and emergency expenses. He asked Jonah to become involved, not as an employee, but as someone who understood exactly what families needed when life suddenly collapsed around them. A year later, Jonah stood in front of a newly renovated community center bearing a simple sign, the Amelia Mercer Second Chance Foundation. Noah stood beside him, holding a photograph of his aunt and smiling through tears. Victor stood on the other side, older and more fragile, but no longer alone. Jonah had not become rich. He still repaired cars. He still woke early, worked hard, and worried about ordinary bills. But his life had changed because he finally understood that sometimes the greatest inheritance is not money. It is the goodness someone leaves behind. Amelia had died believing she was protecting the people she loved. She never knew that her kindness would eventually save her own family. She never knew that the billionaire she had helped would become the man who carried her memory forward. And Jonah finally understood that losing someone does not mean losing everything they gave you. Sometimes their love becomes a light that reaches places they never lived long enough to see. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes second chances are possible, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Every interaction helps these stories reach another person who may be silently struggling and needs to remember that kindness can still change a life. Before we end, write, "Kindness creates second chances" in the comments if you believe that one good person can leave a lifetime of hope behind. Because sometimes, the person we think we lost forever is still speaking through the kindness they left in the world. And sometimes, the debt we carry after losing someone is not a debt of money at all. It is the promise to keep their goodness alive.